Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Whether you celebrate or not, I hope you're having a good day. If you're in a warmer climate and it's not sweater weather, just imagine that it is with me right now in Ohio, where it is currently snowing to a cinematic degree. This is the current view outside right now as I film this. So just imagine that as I'm talking about Eyes Wide Shut, there is literal, like, movie level snow happening right outside that window. Eyes Wide Shut was the final film directed by Stanley Kubrick. It came out in 1999 and he delivered the film to Warner Brothers and died 4 days later. This was a historically long shoot. Production on this movie lasted for 400 days. Now that's just shooting days. That doesn't include pre-production and post-production. They were shooting this movie for over a year. And it's had many different kinds of responses over the years. When it first came out, it was met with some raised eyebrows, but I think almost every single Kubrick film experienced that as well. And it of course had its initial fans, but over the years it's gained an even bigger following, and for me, it's actually one of my favorite Kubrick films. And leave it to him to make such a weird Christmas movie. I mean, when you think of Christmas movies, you don't tend to think of whatever it is that Stanley Kubrick was thinking when he made Eyes Wide Shut. I remember the first time I saw this movie. It was heavily edited on TV in the middle of the night, probably around 2 a.m. That is the perfect time of day to see this movie for the first time. In fact, I don't even think it makes sense to watch Eyes Wide Shut during the middle of the day. That feels very strange to me. Why would you watch this movie when the sun is still out? This movie should only be watched at night when you're half awake in some kind of weird dream state, and this film enters your consciousness and makes you even further back into that dream state. Now, when it comes to Kubrick movies, people tend to overanalyze them, and we're not going to do that here. If you don't believe me, just watch the documentary Room 237, and you will see some Burj Khalifa level reaching into the sky when it comes to people trying to justify their theories about The Shining. I mean, this is a filmmaker who puts a VHS copy of Rain Man in a scene with Tom Cruise. A person like that seems to me to be someone who is excited that he gets to make movies for a living, not some cold, heartless dictator behind the camera trying to force subliminal messages about his films on us. Now, of course, his movies have moments like that, but they're always in service of the story. It's always about the way we feel while watching the movie. And the way people tend to overanalyze his films to such a almost academic level can sometimes get on my nerves, and I'd like to avoid that here. The film stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman as a married couple dealing with quite a bit of marital strife. Obviously, these two were a real couple at the time, and so there was a lot of press surrounding that when the film came out. But all these years later, I love the fact that I can avoid that and just watch the movie for what it is. And from the very beginning of the movie, you can tell there's something wrong with their marriage, because Nicole Kidman is dancing with a dude who 100% would very much like to leave with her, and Tom Cruise is walking around with two girls arm in arm, and they're both aware of what the other person is doing because later in the film they question each other about what they were doing with those people. But the fact that these two would be that willing to, in a public place, surrounded by their professional colleagues and friends, to be seen in that way with other people, it shows you just how far apart they are and how each of them might want something that they're not getting from the other. And when you see what their everyday is like in these early scenes, their lives feel sexless and monotonous to such a tedious degree where they almost feel robotic. The romance is completely gone from their relationship. Even in a scene where Cruise and Kidman are trying to get something going, it just feels like two robots attempting to do that. Almost like breathing or like eating. Like this is something we're supposed to do, right? Like the passion is gone. After they both get high, Nicole Kidman goes on a pot-fueled rant about a man she was willing to throw everything away for just based on a glance from him. This is the first time that Cruise has experienced jealousy as a husband. He's never had that before until she tells him this painfully awkward and deeply hurtful story about a time where she was willing to just throw away everything for this guy just based off of a glance. Like, damn, who was that? Like the Old Spice guy or something? Like, what kind of look did that guy give her? Honestly, I literally could watch Stanley Kubrick shooting scenes of Tom Cruise walking around New York all night for 3 hours. Like, if this whole movie was just Tom Cruise taking a walk in New York and encountering random things, I would still love it. I discovered something very strange on this rewatch. I've seen Eyes Wide Shut, I think, 3 times. And I don't know what this says about me. And I've been thinking about it a lot. And I don't know how I feel about it. But I find this movie oddly comforting. Yeah, I know. That's weird. This is a very depraved movie. I'm not talking about like the cult scene. Like that's its own brand of disturbing. But the sequences of Cruise just wandering around New York at night and going into random stores, moseying into a restaurant and reading a newspaper in the wee hours of the morning. There is something very lo-fi and peaceful about those scenes, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way Kubrick edits them, shoots them, and scores them. I can't pronounce the title of the track, but I will put it right here. This song is used quite a bit in the film, and it is absolutely haunting. I sometimes play it while I'm driving in the car, and I actually did play it on the way to the office where I shoot my reviews with the snow coming down, seeing all the Christmas decorations, and I was just like staring out into the road like Tom Cruise is in the film, just having really disturbing thoughts. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like I actually wanted to rewatch the movie again as soon as it ended, and I felt very like I want to like be back in the vibes of this film. I don't know what that says about me, but it's true, and I'm being transparent. After his first night of almost debauchery, there's this really beautiful moment where he comes home and looks at his daughter in bed and feels a wave of guilt. I think this is a type of moment that only a parent would think to write, because I think there's a version of this scene where he comes home, looks at his wife, and maybe feels that guilt. But he doesn't have that. He looks at his daughter in bed after almost sleeping with someone while he was out on the town, and he just gets this incredible feeling of shame. Like, what are you doing? And it's true. When you have kids, they make you better because you start to think about everything that they see you doing or are aware of you doing, and you realize you have to be that example for them. And it's this very quiet moment where you can insert all of that into Cruise's acting and into the subtext of the scene. Now, the only thing about this movie that has always bugged me is when she asks him what time it is when he wakes her up here, he says it's a little after 4. But that is some 7 a.m. lighting if I have ever seen it. Again, on the notion of how this would affect the family. There's a very chilling moment where Nicole Kidman is helping their daughter with some math homework. And during this entire moment, he's recalling a dream his wife told him about where she was sleeping with like dozens and dozens of other men while he was forced to watch. But he's just thinking about that while she helps her daughter with math problems. One of my all-time favorite movie sequences to have that I think almost always works is the scene where your protagonist realizes that they're being followed, whether it's on foot or in a car, in a parking garage, out in the city streets, wherever it might be, the woods, for instance. It almost always works, and Eyes Wide Shut has maybe my favorite of all time. It's the music and it's the simplicity of it and the look of the streets at night that just accentuates the creep factor. And I've said this before, but I love just being able to watch people think. And there's plenty of that in Eyes Wide Shut. The silence of implied actions and thoughts is so much more powerful than words sometimes. And this is a total sidebar, but Kinects. Did you guys ever have Kinects or play with Kinects? Like, I really loved building things with those. They were like not as popular as Lego, but clearly very popular at one time. And I loved like making little Ferris wheels and all kinds of things. I mean, man, Stanley Kubrick just reminded me of how much I love Kinects. So thank you, Stanley. This film also has the perfect final line. I won't spoil it in case you've never seen the movie. You wouldn't think that he would actually write it because it feels kind of debased, but then this whole movie also is that. Obviously, you know, there's this gigantic scene, the cult scene. I can't show you a single real clip from it except for maybe a few shots of Tom Cruise's mask, but this sequence is the scariest part of the movie for many reasons, because it does feel like you're entering this seedy, dark world, but it also makes you fear for him because immediately people begin to notice that he does not belong there, even with the mask, because he's just doing things differently. And you wonder, how are they knowing? There's this amazing moment where he turns the corner and all of them are staring at him, and it's horrifying. Later on, Sidney Pollack, also rest in peace to that fine director, tells him, hey, you showed up in a cab. That's what cued everyone off to you initially. All these other guys show up in limos. There's all different kinds of ways you could look at this movie, and as I said, I don't want to get too much into that, but Not only is this a film about marital strife and sex, but it's also a movie about class. These powerful people that do these insane things behind closed doors. And even somebody like Cruise, who is obviously very wealthy as a doctor, hasn't even gotten into those rooms yet. And those people look at him like he's an outsider. How rich are those people? How much money do they have to just throw away? But then there's characters like the sex worker that he meets, who's living in this tiny little apartment, who's just trying to make ends meet. And he encounters all different kinds of people throughout the course of 24 hours who are in different sides of the class war or whatever. And all of them have a different way of approaching sex. For some people, it's the only way they can make money. And for others, it's the way that they can throw money away. And lastly, as much as I adore the Mission Impossible movies, Edge of Tomorrow, Top Gun Maverick, I am really looking forward to seeing Tom Cruise do more interesting stuff like this in the future. Top Gun Maverick that's an amazing movie, and the Mission Impossible movies are basically the best action franchise of all time. But I do miss him in the Magnolias of the world and the Collaterals of the world, those really, unfiltered, unhinged roles. I can't wait to see him do more stuff like that. Vanilla Sky is another one, for instance. Most recently, American Made was the closest we got to something like that. So guys, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I hope you had a great one. If you don't celebrate, I hope it was just a really nice day for you. If you've never seen Eyes Wide Shut, check it out. It's incredible. I think it's maybe even a little underrated. I love this movie, and I strangely could watch it a lot. Like I said, I don't know what that means, but it's true. It's how I felt. I'll see you guys very soon with my picks for the best movies of 2024. Thank you guys, as always, for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.